Hi, I'm Nate Seberg, and this is One Day Ahead. Welcome to the Teaching Romeo and Juliet video series. This is the first episode in that series, and here we are going to talk big picture about how I approach teaching this classic play. The first few episodes of this series are available totally free, and the rest you can find at onedayahead.com, along with a whole other series that is summary and analysis, all of the teaching materials, and a bunch more. It's a lot, come check it out. And with that, it's time to put on a mask and party with your mortal enemies as we dive into Romeo and Juliet big picture advice. So the first thing I want to say right at the jump is this unit is built on the premise that you have access to the 1996 Romeo and Juliet film, the one that is very loud. It's Baz Luhrmann, Leo, and Claire Danes. I'm not going to call it the definitive adaptation, but it is certainly the most fun. So before we get into the weeds of individual themes and characters and stuff, we need to talk about how hard this is to teach. It's probably why you're here. I'm a pretty just go for it kind of teacher, but I'll certainly cop to being nervous about teaching Shakespeare the first time around. I have actually no specific training on how to do this well. You are teaching something that you probably last read when you were in high school, and you definitely didn't understand it then. And as an English teacher, there are specific challenges and obstacles that you just don't face with other books. I want to validate all of those concerns. I validate your parking. But more than that, there are people who have dedicated their lives to studying Shakespeare, and that brings its own set of worries. There are people who got their degree in this stuff, and they know things about the history and the nuances. And what if they fact checked me and I said something that's wrong, and then they leave comments below and they all start with "well, actually," and then they do, that nod head thing that they do. And they have time to do this, I imagine, because they're unemployed. But listen, knowing that those people are out there, knowing that you comparatively don't know nearly as much about Shakespeare as them, you cannot let that paralyze you. Because, and this is important, plenty of people can tell students more about the history, the context, the nuance of the text, but I can make them care. I can make them think about someone other than themselves for 5 seconds. I can make them love this goddamn book. And what is that worth? I don't want to have to choose. But between being flawlessly accurate and genuinely fun and alive and empathetic, I know which one I choose. So relax and just go for it. Do your best, it will be fine. So let's start. The most important piece of advice I can give you for teaching Romeo and Juliet has to do with your overall disposition during the unit. Through how you act, the jokes you make, even how you treat the physical books, you are going to intentionally convey one overarching vibe the whole time, from beginning to end. And here it is, my most important piece of advice. Put off the vibe of total irreverence. That is your approach. The last thing you want is for your kids to be over here, arms crossed, skeptical, and you to be over here with Shakespeare trying to get them to join your team. Guys, this is really good, trust me, come on. No, there's nothing precious here, nothing vaunted, nothing sacred. This is a play, as far as you're concerned, full of sex jokes, teenage infatuation, and homicide, and listen, you're not even sure if it's that good. So Shakespeare is over here alone, and you are over here with the kids. When you put yourself with the kids, when you are the first to make fun of the text, when you vow to point out every dirty joke and complain about the weird tangent parts that don't actually go anywhere or matter or make sense, you put yourself on their team, and you give the insecure students a path in, a path that they definitely already know how to take because it's mockery, and they are quite good at that. You are going to consolidate your class over here and then watch as you slowly migrate together toward understanding and empathy and honest enjoyment. So how practically do I make that move? Well, a few ways. When we get to the scene-by-scene analysis later, I will point out specific jokes and irreverent observations I make, but one of the first things I do is I ditch the name William Shakespeare. Strip away all the crusty fame. I go with Billy Shakes, which I know is painful. It's dumb, it's super cringy, but it actually gets way worse than that. I also look for opportunities to nickname characters. One kid said Romeo was emo, and he became Emo Romeo for the rest of the play. I had a kid named Joe. Benvolio became Benjolio, and he read every line of the play that Benjolio had. My favorite is that Paul Rudd plays Paris from the movie, and he was also named 2021's Sexiest Man Alive. Yeah, he is. So we replace it every time. Tell me quickly, Juliet, can you like of 2021's Sexiest Man Alive Paul Rudd's love? At the end of the play, when Paris, spoiler alert, dies, you've never seen kids more distraught. He was just so sexy. It's campy. I get it. But these things, these little things, they systematically strip away those obstacles and they invite students in. Get rid of all the cultural cachet. Get rid of all the fame. And this is like an amazing love story. No, toss it all. Find your own jokes and take every opportunity to be the one throwing the spitballs from the back of the room. Start over here and come to Shakespeare together. Next up, you are not going to read every page of this book. Let that go. You are going to switch smoothly between reading, watching, and full-on skipping stuff. I have a video and a page in the unit called What to Read, Watch, and Skip. It tells you how I move through the book, and you should follow it. And you should also know, none of this reading gets assigned as homework, and nothing is read silently ever. We will read all of this together and aloud. I hand out parts at the beginning of scenes, and I do only volunteers. I handle the stage directions, I make quick observations, and I'm constantly switching readers in and out of parts within scenes. Finally, one last big picture thing before we go. You need to think through how you are going to talk about suicide in this book. There's really two parts here to consider. There's the actual suicide at the end of the play, and the threats of self-harm that show up all over the place, mostly from Romeo. For advice on the full-on suicide, see the Teaching Act 5 video. For the rest, I start the unit with a blanket statement about suicide being a serious thing, about resources and school counselors, then I move on. I make fun of Romeo a lot, but I stay away from specifically mocking that aspect, and I mostly ignore it. You are going to need to assess your own kids and make your own mind up on this one, but don't ignore it. Have a plan. And that's Romeo and Juliet Big Picture Advice. You can check out all my stuff, including this whole series and more on onedayahead.com. Next time, we get specific as we talk about the pre-reading stuff you need kids to do before they actually crack open this play. We'll see you next time on One Day Ahead.